All right, buckle up, because something truly unprecedented just happened. For the first time since 1945, Japanese warplanes aren't just flying, they're roaring over European skies. We're talking 4 F-15Js, with the incredibly fitting call sign Atlantic Eagles, that just touched down in Germany after a mind-boggling 10,000-kilometer sprint. Think about that. They flew across Alaska, Canada, and the UK, not for a photo op at the Rhine, but as a stark, undeniable message to Beijing and Moscow. It's Tokyo telling the world that the Indo-Pacific and Europe, they're no longer separate arenas. They're one massive interconnected strategic chessboard. Why now? What does it really mean the moment those jets light their afterburners in NATO airspace? Stick around, because the answer isn't just big. It's the kind of shift that could rewrite the next 50 years of global power dynamics. The historical shock. Let's get real for a second. Japan's constitution, penned in the shadow of war, still explicitly states that land, sea, and air forces will never be maintained for war. Yet here we are, witnessing 180 Japanese airmen refueling their advanced F-15Js right beside RAF Typhoons and German Eurofighters. It's a sight that until last week was frankly unthinkable. Tokyo's jets had never dared to fly west of Hawaii. Europe was always seen as America's neighborhood, not Japan's. That self-imposed fence, that invisible line in the sand, it just snapped. And the symbolism? It's absolutely monumental. The only other time Japanese aircraft crossed this route was back in 1942, when a single float plane dropped a few incendiary bombs on an Oregon forest, a forgotten footnote of history. This time the payload isn't explosives. It's a powerful message of deterrence, but the tremor, the sheer historical resonance feels just the same. History isn't just repeating itself. It's bending in entirely new directions. This entire operation from September 14 to October 1, 2025, wasn't just a flight. It was a declaration. What actually flew? So what kind of hardware are we talking about here? The package might seem small, but believe me, it's surgical in its precision and punch. We've got 4 F-15Js. These aren't your grandpa's Eagles. These are domestic variants upgraded with cutting-edge AESA radars and advanced missile warning blisters, making them highly capable air superiority fighters. They can hit speeds of Mach 2.5, powered by Pratt & Whitney F100-220 engines built right there in Japan by IHI Corporation. And yes, they still pack a 20mm M61 Vulcan gun, alongside 10 hardpoints for a variety of weapons. Backstopping these Eagles are 2 Kawasaki C-2 freighters, hauling crucial spares and equipment, plus a pair of tankers, 1 proven KC-767, and 1 brand new KC-46A Pegasus. Together, this contingent gives the Eagles an unrefueled range of roughly 4,500 kilometers. Add 3 aerial top-ups and suddenly you've got trans-Pacific reach without having to beg foreign nations for gas. That matters a lot. Because the ability to self-deploy, to project power independently across vast distances, isn't just about showing off. It's the critical difference between being a regional player with a cool gimmick and a truly global air force. Japan just definitively stepped over that line. The route. No one missed now. Let's talk about the journey itself, because every single waypoint was chosen with surgical intent. Look at the map. Yokota Air Base in Japan to Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska, then to Canadian Forces Base Goose Bay. From there it was across the Atlantic to RAF Coningsby and RAF Brize Norton in England, before finally reaching Lodge Air Base in Germany. Notice a pattern? Every single stop was a NATO or Five Eyes base. This wasn't a coincidence. At each ramp, Japanese crews weren't just stretching their legs. They were actively practicing hot pit refuels, testing jam-resistant communications, and conducting combined briefings with their Western counterparts. By the time that formation reached Germany, the Japanese pilots weren't just visitors. They were plugging into NATO's air policing network like they'd been doing it for years. Interoperability might sound like a dry, bureaucratic term, but you need to realize what it means on the ground, or rather, in the air. It means Japanese radars can now cue German Patriot batteries in real time. That isn't just a drill. That's a direct off-ramp to a wider, more integrated security posture. It's about building a seamless defense web. Why Europe? Why now? So why this bold move, and why right now? Well, it feels like 3 pressure cookers are all blowing their tops at once. First, you've got China's expanding naval power. Their carrier groups aren't just sticking to their own backyard anymore. They're pushing aggressively past the first island chain, probing further into the Pacific. Simultaneously, Russian Bears, those massive Tu-95 bombers, are testing Japanese airspace almost daily. It's a constant low-level military harassment that Japan can't ignore. Second, Washington is quietly but firmly asking its allies to carry more of the local freight. The U.S. wants to pivot its assets elsewhere, meaning partners like Japan need to step up and ensure regional stability. And let's be honest, they're doing just that. Third, Europe has finally woken up to a chilling reality. A crisis in Taiwan, thousands of miles away, would strangle its semiconductor supply just as surely as the war in Ukraine choked off its gas. The world is interconnected and economic security is national security. Linking these two theaters, the Indo-Pacific and Euro-Atlantic, makes absolute strategic sense. If Beijing or Moscow has to look east and west simultaneously, if they have to split their resources and their attention, they're far more likely to hesitate. This isn't just deterrence. It's deterrence through strategic stretch. China and Russia are already reacting. You think Beijing and Moscow missed this? Not a chance. Within hours of the F-15J's landing, China's foreign ministry was already on the phone, calling the deployment a dangerous alignment that undermines regional stability. Now, that's diplomat speak for we absolutely hate this encirclement, and we're nervous. Meanwhile, Moscow's defense blogosphere went even darker. Posts were popping up claiming the F-15Js would be sniffing out radar gaps over Kaliningrad, that highly sensitive Russian exclave, and sharing that intel with Poland. Whether that's true or not is almost beside the point. Perception drives posture. Both sides are now actively rehearsing their countermoves. So what should we expect? More Russian Tu-95 skirting northern Japan, perhaps even more frequent patrols. And don't be surprised to see more Chinese destroyers popping up in the Baltic Sea for, "Hi, we're here too," exercises. This deployment has certainly ruffled some feathers, and the geopolitical ripples are just beginning. What NATO gets out of it, so what's in it for NATO? A lot, actually. Japan brings three incredibly valuable things to the table that Europe frankly lacks. First, they have these impressive long-range C-2 transports that aren't just big. They can land on rough, unprepared strips, giving NATO crucial logistical flexibility. Second, Japan possesses a mountain of classified anti-submarine warfare (ASW) data on Chinese submarines, gained from decades of diligent monitoring. That intelligence is gold. And third, Japan boasts a defense industry that can churn out high-quality torpedoes, advanced chips, and sophisticated ships without the kind of political gridlock that often plagues European procurement. In return, Tokyo gets access to Europe's cutting-edge cyber ranges, meteor burst communications technology, which is incredibly resilient, and, crucially, a seat at the doctrinal table. This isn't just about exchanging gear. It's about sharing knowledge, strategies, and deeply integrating their defense philosophies. The quid pro quo is already tangible. Next year, German Typhoons are slated to deploy to Komatsu Air Base in Japan, the first reciprocal visit of its kind. The alliance isn't just transatlantic anymore. It's become truly transglobal. The hidden industrial play, but wait, there's an even deeper layer to this. Behind every fighter flight, every strategic deployment, there's a contract, a massive industrial play. Think about it. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries will soon be co-producing parts for the GCAP, the Global Combat Air Program, which is the ambitious sixth-generation fighter project Britain, Italy, and Japan are building together. Flying these F-15Js to Europe isn't just a military exercise. It's a real-world stress test. Engineers can now gather invaluable data on how seals, coatings, and hydraulics perform in extreme Arctic conditions, then transition to temperate European climates. That data feeds directly into the design and refinement of future GCAP airframes. Meanwhile, Kawasaki isn't just flying their C-2 transports. They're actively pitching them as a cheaper, more capable replacement for NATO's aging C-130 fleet. So this entire tour doubles as a flying showroom. Imagine the pitch. Watch the cargo bay in action, sign the purchase order, pick your camouflage. This isn't just defense diplomacy. It's half theater, half high-stakes trade show. It's about securing future contracts and shaping the next generation of defense capabilities. Could this go wrong? Of course it could. Every high-stakes gamble carries risk. Japanese public opinion is still, shall we say, highly allergic to overseas deployments. One mishap, one unforeseen incident, and the government could face a serious crisis, even collapse. European left parties are already grumbling loudly about militarizing the Indo-Pacific in our own backyard, fearing entanglement in distant conflicts. And let's be brutally honest, if a Japanese pilot ever has to eject over contested airspace, rescue teams would be operating 8,000 kilometers from home. The logistical and political complexities would be immense. But here's the thing. Planners in Tokyo and in NATO capitals have clearly judged that the bigger risk, the truly unacceptable risk, is doing nothing. It's standing idly by while authoritarian powers continue to nibble at the edges of the international order. So the gamble is on. They've weighed the potential downsides against the strategic imperative, and they've decided to roll the dice. It's a calculated risk, but a risk nonetheless. Mid-roll CTA. If this kind of behind-the-numbers analysis keeps you up at night in the best way, then you know what to do. Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into, say, those China-Russia joint bomber patrols that just surprised Alaska. More data, less fluff, that's always the promise here. Looking ahead. The 2026 scenario. Let's project this chessboard forward a bit. By 2026, Japan's new generation of standoff cruise missiles are set to enter service. Pair those with the F-15J, and suddenly you have a formidable platform with a 1,000-kilometer strike radius. Now imagine pairing that with German-based tankers. You've just created a force that can hold critical targets, like areas in Crimea or even parts of Shanghai, at risk, all without ever leaving Western airspace. And it gets even tighter. Add in Spain's coming A330 tankers and Italian F-35s operating off Japanese carriers, and the mesh becomes incredibly robust. Analysts at Rand Corporation have already run the numbers on this kind of integrated defense. Their conclusion? A two-theater squeeze like this raises the cost of any potential Chinese move on Taiwan by roughly 40%. That, my friends, is deterrence by arithmetic. It's about making the numbers so overwhelmingly unfavorable that aggression simply isn't worth the price. What this means for you. Okay, so what does any of this mean for you, the person watching this? Well, global supply chains, semiconductor prices, energy routes, literally everything that underpins our modern lives, rides on open, secure sea lanes. A Japan-Europe air bridge, a truly global security framework, makes those lanes safer, absolutely, but it also undeniably militarizes them. So what can you expect? Bigger defense budgets on all sides, for sure. Higher R&D spending will trickle down into civilian tech innovations, which isn't always a bad thing. And maybe, just maybe, fewer hot wars, because everyone is now too busy calculating the astronomical risks of a multi-front conflict. The upside? Increased stability in a volatile world. The downside? Higher taxes to pay for it all, and probably more noisy airfields near you. It's a trade-off. Choose your fighter, pun absolutely intended. Conclusion. So the next time you hear a headline about Japanese jets in Europe, remember it's not just about a few shiny fighters crossing a continent. It is about Tokyo making a profound decision. Its security blanket now stretches halfway around the planet. It is about NATO finally realizing that the Pacific isn't some distant abstract place. It's very much its front yard too, and it is perhaps most importantly about Beijing and Moscow waking up to a two-front reality they absolutely never wanted to face. Atlantic Eagles is more than just a code name. It's the moment the post-war order, as we knew it, fully expired. History books 20 years from now will either call this the deployment that brilliantly prevented World War III, or the stunt that tragically provoked it. Which side will the dice land on? Tell me your bet in the comments below, and while you decide, consider hitting subscribe for the ride ahead. Because this mission, my friends, is going to be a long one.